creators to come along, do a little game, and then do they? I'm guessing they also get a cut in terms of what you guys put for the in-app purchases.
So if the creator sells snapshots, things that can be purchased from their game, these are cosmetic items that can be featured on someone's profile. Say
Mm-hmm.
you're like playing a game or something and you beat the game, and then there's like several special items you could use your points to purchase and like feature on your profile. If they offer you one of those items in the game, then you'll be able to collect it, and you'll collect it for some amount of bricks, which is our currency, and then you'll be able to feature that on your profile in a pin slot. And in that process, like the creator will get a cut of about um, the creator gets 80% of the bricks from the purchase, and then they can
Okay.
cash out those bricks for money.
Okay. Interesting. So the bricks is like that's like the universal currency that you guys have set up.
That's right, yeah. That's the just general currency. You can buy it through in-app purchases. You can also earn it, or in certain cases, we just like kind of generate it out of thin air. But usually, we're pretty strict about kind of where those bricks come from.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, but just before we proceed, we are live. Thank you all for joining us on the White Pill podcast. Here with me today, I have Lukalot,
Hello.
who is a fellow moot. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, really glad to be here. This is cool. I've watched a couple of your other podcasts, and just I don't know, it's fun to be a part of it in person now.
Yeah, I'm surprised when you mentioned that. I was like, oh shit! I knew that like people were watching it, but I didn't think like what are the people that I want to have on. Actually, I started as a viewer.
Yeah, I definitely like the kind of topics that you'll cover and the kind of people that you've been interviewing. So I showed up a couple times. I'm gonna try to be regular too. Um, you know, I think I'm gaining some things out of it.
I sure hope so. Because the whole idea behind it was just so that I could have the chance to sit down and have some interesting conversations with people. And if others listen and they benefit, then hey, I'm all for it. That's great. I've been really lucky to have the guests that I've had on so far. Like Propel is probably my luckiest get yet,
Mm.
just because of how different his job is to, I mean, anything that I experience on a daily basis. The guy's a fucking whiz. I don't understand how there's just guys like him out there. Just building rockets like it's nobody's fucking business. Like
Yep, I
insane.
watched a little bit of this one. Do you put your podcasts up somewhere that people can watch them in retro? Because I don't think I caught that entire podcast.
Oh yeah, I okay. So yeah, I have a whole website set up for all my shit. I'll link it to you right now, actually. But yeah, I have a podcast featured on the Substack. It's on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and even Apple Podcasts as like just the audio. But for video, it's Spotify has it and YouTube as well, and Rumble,
Got
obviously.
Yeah.
But in any case, so you were telling me earlier about this company that you're part of called Castle. Um, did you like just come onto the project, or were you one of the first like people to help build it?
So actually, it's kind of an interesting story. I first found so I I have to go back to before I was in San Francisco when I was 17 years old. I'd been making video games for like years at the time, because it was my biggest obsession as a kid. And I was 17, and I had always built my games and like at kind of as usual on a computer, like most people will do this. And that was mostly because there wasn't any option to build a game on a phone. I was out of the house quite frequently. I'd be on like really long car rides and stuff. I grew up in Florida, and so um, I always was looking for sort of ways to build things on my phone, and I couldn't find them. And I was 17 years old. I was actually kind of screwing around with other tools and communities. I was like using this thing called Pico 8. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I think so.
Um,
PICO.
yeah, PICO. It's like yeah, that's not it. It's you probably have to put the 8 on the end, I guess. Pico 8. It's a fantasy console. The idea is that it's kind of like, yeah, there we go. It's kind of like if you had the SNES, but you could design it today in all the ways that you thought would be the most interesting for producing um, a cool retro game context. And so it's like 128 by 128 pixels, um, and you're kind of forced to use only one of, I believe, 8 colors for each pixel on the screen. And people make these games that are really cool. Someone's made Doom, of course. There's also a No Man's Sky demake. People tend to make demakes because it's rather than kind of remakes. So, but like, there's Nuclear Clone, as you can see on like the far right there. Lots of different interesting remakes of existing games, but like even more retro. It's almost like you made the what should have been the original, in 95 or something, but you know, but we made it in 2010. Um, so anyway, was kind of getting into that, and I found through that community, I ended up kind of like getting pulled away from that community really fast because I found this application called Castle that was on my phone. It was in beta. It had only just came out like about a month or two before. It wasn't on the App Store. It was in like an open beta on test flight.
Mm.
Um, and I was like really attracted to just the initial pitch that was given to me by, I think, some like tweet that I saw about it. And the pitch was just, you can make games on your phone, and it's a community where your games are also like shared directly to people really fast and easily. You don't need to like kind of build a game and then export it and then put it in the App Store or something like that. And I had never seen anything like this before in the App Store, despite having searched for it for probably almost a decade. It turns out there's a reason for that, actually, which is that Apple just historically would kill all of these companies that were trying to do this. And so um, we were sort of making sure that we weren't a competing app store and trying to be really tactful about it. Um, which is kind of the angle that this company started on, was just sort of like, how do you do this in a way that doesn't trigger Apple's I guess what's the word, immune system. And we successfully did that because we made an app that like is not threatening in any way. It's like a very it's just allows people to make small games and stuff like that, and it's quite clearly not a competing app store. um but nowadays, like, there's many of these, and the reason is that there's like probably 5 other companies that are building an app that's similar to ours. I would say that ours was probably like the first one. But what's happened is that Apple has stopped uh kind of engaging in these little, like, you can't build this because you're potentially a competing app store kind of um battles, because of the Epic Games situation and like kind of how they had to roll back a lot of their policies. So now we have free reign to just continue building what we were building, and we kind of came into this thing at the right time.
Gotcha. And in regards to the Epic Games thing, I was never quite clear on what happened with that. Is it because like there was some like differential prices that Apple was forcing uh like their own users to be charged for like V-Bucks or whatever, or like what was the actual problem with that?
If I recall correctly, you're right. It was about differential prices. It was about like Epic Games really wanted to be able to, you know, sell their content without paying Apple's 30% tax.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it started. That's how like the conflict started to in the eyes of the public. It's like Epic Games attempted to evade, and then Apple didn't allow them to evade, and took their app off the App Store. Um, but I also think that like Epic Games is a very they really wanted to hold their own in terms of having their own app store, competing with Steam, a lot of these things. And I think that they definitely, an underlying thing in their decision to attempt to evade Apple's tax was just sort of like a general rebelliousness about Apple's policies. And one of the things is that they really wanted to be able to have these like meta, these be able to put platforms on the App Store that allow you to navigate between different games and stuff like that, which is something that they have done on desktop. And I think they haven't went really deep into that yet, but I think I have heard it said that sort of, I don't know where this originally was stated, but it might have been um, it might have been Sweeney, it might have been someone else, but just that like Fortnite is supposed to be this like sort of meta game that contains a lot of games inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think wanting to go in that direction, they were probably also concerned about Apple's policies on that kind of thing. And they were able to, during this process, they specifically spent time litigating over that kind of thing, and it affected Roblox very rapidly. Like Roblox, you saw Roblox start changing their policies and the way that they did their communication because they were already in this space and they were like kind of being impacted by it in a
Mm-hmm.
positive way mostly. But they were kind of trying to like use the information they were gaining to adhere better to the new policies. And yeah, now we kind of have a much more open space.
I see. And so, in terms of Castle, so you started out as a beta tester, and now you actually work hand in hand with the company as an employee, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started out as a beta tester. I was just really interested in making games and content, and so I found the games on this app. I started playing them, and I was pretty impressed that these had been made on people's phones. And I started making my own. Yeah, this is my account. Um, and recently I've just kind of been putting out little things and stuff. But originally, I was probably making a pretty big game every week or so. And this was really early when we started with like 1,000 users max.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew most of those people in person because they were really engaged. They were on the Discord and stuff like that. And then as the app grew, we started like running ads and like a bunch of stuff like that. We grew a lot larger, and um I ended up like being the largest content creator for the first like several years. I technically still am, but I don't really make content as much anymore because I work at the company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was kind of my in of like I, I make a lot of content. I have a lot of um, connection to the community, and I understood kind of how to uh, what mattered about the app and what mattered about the app to a lot of different people in the app. So I joined the design team and I started kind of building prototypes for certain backend things, continued making games, and I run the community now as well.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Must have been one hell of a feeling to finally get that offer letter from them,
Oh
having
yeah.
worked your way up to it.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I was also 18 years old. At the time, I was working with this Latvian game development company, but I was making, like no money at all. Probably like $300 a month doing that or something. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like a minimum wage job. I was kind of just doing what I wanted to do. Um, and getting an offer letter that was like San Francisco salary was I confusing actually. I didn't really understand entirely
Mm-hmm.
at the time.
That's wild. That's wild, man.
Yeah, it's
What a
great.
journey. And I know that like a lot of these platforms, they do offer a lot of young creatives. Well, I mean, just as you said in your own experience, um, just an opportunity to kind of like flex their muscles with, I mean, just absolute basic tech. Like, 'cause now you could just do this shit on your phone. Now there's like limitless resources for which anyone can use online. Plenty of them are free. Raspberry Pis are cheap as all hell. So it's the cost for participating in this market has diminished like so greatly from the time when I was young. Um,
Yeah.
which is incredible because a lot of people like they'll have started on like let's say like Newgrounds, making like shitty flash animations, and several years later they're like, man, that was it's fucking awesome that they did that because now I work at Pixar, or what have you.
Yeah,
It's
crazy.
important for these places to kind of just give people an introduction to how this kind of stuff works.
Yeah, I really love watching people start out somewhere like this and then develop into really great creators who have like kind of enriched their whole design flow and creation flow with all the ideas of everyone around them in these communities and stuff like that. I grew up on Khan Academy, which had
Oh
its
yeah.
own creator community. It was like a little niche like programming community on Khan Academy where you can still find it. It's still there. You have to go through like probably 4 or 5 different buttons just to get to it. But there's this it's a social media hot list basically of everyone's content. Um, and yeah, I can actually guide you to it if you wanted to see it. But it's like uh, yeah, you gotta click explore, and then you gotta go to programming, which is somewhere in there. Computing, intro to yeah, it's the JavaScript one. Computer programming JavaScript. Intro to JS drawing and animation. That's the first episode that teaches people how to make games on Khan Academy, and it teaches you how to post games too.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you follow that, you kind of get connected to this social thing that they've really tried to bury. I think it's because there was just moderation overhead, and it wasn't like super useful
Mm-hmm.
to them as an organization at the time. But it was what I grew up on, and it was really fun and amazing. And it's very similar to what Castle is now. We're trying to replicate that, um, but as something that's kind of self-sustaining and designed just for that, rather than kind of a larger platform that's trying to support it as a small part.
I see. I see. Interesting. And in terms of where you guys are headed, from what you can say, what's on the horizon for Castle? Is it just further development of the problem, or sorry, the platform, making it more robust, or are you guys eyeing something unique for the future?
There's a lot of things that we are working on right now. I think that um, let me think about what I can probably share. I think we just released a new update that added parties. So we added direct messages, ways for users to chat with each other and have groups where they play games together and they pass, games around that they found through the feed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's been really fun. It's been really cool just being able to like hop into the app and chat with users. And I think people are able to share high scores with each other, and it's becoming this kind of like very fun multi-user loop. We're going to be expanding that in a bunch of different ways, and I think that's going to be really cool. But there's some really big features that are sort of in the works right now that um, I feel like a few Castle users might watch this podcast, and otherwise I would maybe just say them. But I also don't actually want the whole community to be like, when does that thing come out? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. Um, so I can't share the exact details, but I think there's going to be some things that just really expand the kinds of games that you can build. Um, Castle's already Turing complete. You can build anything in theory, but there's certain things that um, are require features at the platform level in order to function. Like, for instance, things that allow integration between multiple decks, where decks can sort of interact with each other, and you can maybe bring um, some sort of data or information between decks with your player character, stuff like that. I guess that's a fairly specific feature that I'm describing, but I'm we're not sure exactly how it's going to manifest yet, and it's probably going to be a month or two or an unknown amount of time until we release it. So
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I'm guessing you guys are. Well, I mean, just about every company out there that's able to is trying to inject AI into its processes somehow. I'm guessing you guys
that's
are also considering that as well.
yeah. So mostly AI is really, really good at helping people be better versions of themselves as creators, be able to skip ahead with
Mm-hmm.
things that they're really, that they find dull or uninteresting. I find that so I use AI in my own like both tools and projects that I make on the side, and also in order to make those tools and projects, I'm like using AI. And I'm definitely a big fan of like using LLMs to speed up my workflow personally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it actually makes me a really, really it makes me a much more effective engineer than I am without LLMs. Um, and I definitely want to bring that to the app and allow people to have that as well, which involves just like, especially I think people on our app are going to want to be able to very casually just say something to the LLM and it be able to kind of figure out what they mean and what they want. Um, something like they usually won't include technical detail. They may not actually even if they're a new user, they may not even understand how Castle logic works, how you can like write little scripts or something in Castle, and they want this to just kind of exist based on them expressing their desire within a sentence or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are working on this, and we're just calling it like you know some kind of in development. We're just calling it Composer, and it's basically the idea that you can just really easily chat to AI and get it to help you fill out certain scripts and stuff. And it's sort of just a a really effective kind of search in a certain way. It's like, how do I figure this out? Instead of searching documentation, you just get it, kind of the answer plopped right into the right spot, and you might need to tweak it, but it's pretty good.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, because I'm right there with you in terms of embracing AI as a tool that can leverage your capabilities and just, I mean, really just realistically make it so much easier to just skip uh, some of the boring bullshit that you might just not be all that interested in. Like you were
Mhm,
saying about like all the different logic paths that you would have to write out to change how certain items interact with you in game. Like, yeah,
mhm.
I could imagine that that gets like pretty goddamn tedious after like after a couple of hours into that. So
Yeah.
having a tool that can really alleviate that would be ideal. I mean, even right now, I love exploring the Hugging Face whenever I get a chance to just see like what kind of new spaces are popping up, and all these different tools that are, I mean, just making my day the whole lot easier than it used to be like years ago, where I have to manually like go into Photoshop, learn how to do this technique, do this, do that. No, that's a waste of time. Fuck that. AI AI is here to save the day for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think also I've been thinking about something lately, which is, I said, like, it's good for filling out all of the like, just kind of doing all the menial work, and it is, it's, like, really, really good for that, but
Mm,
also, I think if you get good at it, you've probably found ways to do this too in certain areas, and I'm starting to get get better at this, is just, like, you can go places that you just wouldn't have went before. One of the simplest instances of this is just you're a person who only has you only have so much attention span, you only have so much energy in a day. And if you cut out a bunch of this work that you would have had to do otherwise, now you get to think about other things and you get to maybe like build something that you wouldn't have built otherwise at all in terms of like on the design level or something. And then that's in a feedback loop with the AI also. Now you're passing in like better designs and better content to the AI. And this loop um, becomes, I think, really interesting and has really interesting emergent properties of as far as like what someone can do with or without AI. If you're a really good designer and you're willing to go into um, into figuring out how to communicate with an LLM and be really good at it, I think you can actually um, become something much greater than the sum of your two parts, you know, the person and the LM. So I'm really excited about watching that happen. I've been kind of calling it the threshold, which is the point at which, at least an interesting property of it is the point at which like you're over the threshold of being able to sort of asymptote towards infinity in terms of how good you are at like your reasoning and design and engineering skills or like whatever else other tasks you're doing with AI. It's sort of like if you're a person who's being introduced to AI, who's using AI, or LM specifically, um, if you're over this threshold, you might be able to just like really rapidly, almost exponentially, grow out into new skills and learn new things from a model, and also have it help you implement stuff into code you're writing and stuff like that. Maybe spin up entire new projects. If you're below this level, you might like be enhanced, but it's kind of this linear enhancement where you're not actually learning at an exponentially greater rate every day. I feel like I'm like over the edge of this like singularity layer where it might be slow um, growth, but it's like it's basically logarithmic. And every day, I feel like I'm engaging with like more and more topics and more like languages, more and more frameworks and stuff that I can just spin up and like use. Um, I think this is normal for humans throughout history, but it's just like we've accelerated it to the point that it feels like this tipping point, this like Schelling point within people's AI engagement. And it's mostly to do with like how much do you just dig into AI and research and like figure out how to communicate with it and stuff like that.
yeah, absolutely. There's no shortage of free tools for people to use. Like my first introduction to it was um, Perplexity, which I quickly, after a couple days of use, I was like, all right, well, I'm done with Google now. I have no need for it whatsoever. Perplexity solves that like completely, and in a way that Google, in my opinion, is going to be very hard pressed to match at this rate, especially
Mhm.
with how their AI has been, or at least how in the headlines it's been hallucinating, like all these like really weird prompts with the first initial release of Gemini and all that. Um,
Yeah.
I'm sure they've patched like plenty of it since, but um, just for me, the way that Google is operated as a company, I feel much more comfortable using Perplexity now. Um,
Yeah.
and at the moment, it's like just very basic, like prompting, like if I need some kind of explanation on a research topic that I'm doing, or a story that I want to cover, or something I want to write about. Um, but in terms of like reaching that kind of threshold that you're talking about, I the way that I've been interacting with it is I get the I prompt the LLM, I get the information I need, and then I just move forward. I don't have like an integrated system right now where like um I could really automate a lot of the stuff that I need to do. Like every time I make a podcast episode, I need to cut a certain amount of it off to like change the intro, then I got to change the audio and do some edits there. I don't know of any integrated system that's able to right now, like as an even an AI agent that's able to do all that. I'm sure we'll get them eventually, but at the moment, it's still I find it's still a lot more manual labor, at least in the creative space.
Yeah, I think that's true. Um, I I think there's people working on that problem in specific, and it feels like something that, we have a lot of data that's interpretable as just linear, a linear set of images or whatever, and you would think we could build something to fix that. It's
Hmm.
just like I think it's a harder problem than a lot of the stuff people are already doing in text. It's actually a harder problem than making um, a really good programmer assistant or whatever, just because you're working with all this multimodal data,
Hmm.
and so no one's like properly tackled it yet. I'm sure that if you look this up online, that there's like 3 or 4 results of people who have like tackled it badly or like attempted. Um, so just a matter of time for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like, in the context that I'm talking about, it's very different than like, um, simply asking it questions about lines of code or why it generated that lines of code or what the purpose of it is or um, what uh, what other possibilities there are in that regard. With this, it's like you're talking about like a model that would work off your desktop and taking all this information in, almost kind
Mm.
of like how I don't know what Windows, like what their or Microsoft rather, what their name for their assistant is yet, but they've already created like some kind of integration with it in Windows 11. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I was thinking of it as almost like just a fully LLM integrated video editor, but I don't know if that would even satisfy your needs.
No,
You
because
might need something.
I would need it to go back and forth between like OBS. I'd need it to like be able to scan all my system files and all that. Like Adobe has some tools that they're working on, but it's all mostly at least centered around like actual like media generation. Like this one
Mm,
demo that they had with one of the guys from Key and Peele. They were looking into how they can change audio for scenes because like shooting as an actor, you'll do a couple of dozen takes maybe for like each shot, but maybe something in the post edit, like they thought we need to go in a different direction with the script. And now Adobe has this tool where like if you feed it, I think it's about not even like 5 minutes of dialogue. Pretty sure it's like it only takes 30 seconds at this point. Now it'll have like the full range of your voice with like punctuation and everything, and you'll be able to just simply type in what sentence you need to edit or what dialogue you need to change, and it'll go in and do it for you. So in that regard, like they're working their asses off to get that kind of generative tech, but in terms of like a
yeah.
cross program, cross system functionality, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited for more generalization of it, being able to interact with your computer and stuff, do computer use and things like that. I also think there's a possibility that the solution to this problem for the foreseeable future until we get like more effective general computer use is just build a combined screen recorder plus video editor app and like just do really really good AI integration within that. Maybe someone will try that. It sounds like a huge like effort though. So I'm not sure. It's like a huge design effort and a huge engineering effort.
I'm sure someone will think of it. There's a space in the market for it, so there's got to be some enterprising individual out there
Mhm.
that'll actually take the time to do it. Which yet another like great part of this digital age that we live in is that like there's plenty of people that are blackpilled about this that'll say like, oh well, like what's the point? AI is gonna do everything for us. Like why would I bother? um, trying to learn any of these skills, like go into like computer science or what have you. Like, why would I bother going into these programs? I mean, the way that I've seen it, even from my limited interactions with AI, is that it's a tool like anything else, and the person that's able to best harness that tool and to kind of be a quote unquote ideas guy, like that meme that's been going around.
Yeah.
That's the person that's going to win it, because the person that's able to tap in to different aspects of history and culture and philosophy and aesthetics and design and systems architecture and like what have you, anybody that's able to be that kind of Rick Rubin tastemaker, they're going to be the winners when it comes to like as AI continues to develop. Sure, there's still going to be plenty of jobs that are going to be automated away and whatnot, but that just means that everybody's going to have that much more leverage when all these tools come online.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I 100% agree with that. Um, it's going to be people who are connecting across multiple, lots of different fields and who do have like really strong taste that matches to the kind of like needs of a certain subset of consumers. And I have been very happy sort of watching AI stabilize right now at a point. It's like slowing down somewhat at a point where um it hasn't caused dramatic, it's not in and of itself extremely agentic, and yet it's like really enhancing human abilities. And
Hmm.
so I don't know, I'm excited about like I feel like 1 or 2 generations out, um it's going to be just the people that I know who are already good at building things with AI are going to be incredibly like overpowered. And I'm excited to see what they do.
Absolutely, yeah. And I wanted to get your take on this. Do you hear about OpenAI's recent announcement with the operator?
I saw a little bit about it. I haven't actually read their announcement page.
Yeah, so it looks like they created an agent that has its own browser,
Nice.
that'll be able to activate, and that's going to be with ChatGPT Pro, which, as I recall, what
Mhm.
is that? Is that 200 a month? Is that what
It's
they're asking
200.
for?
Yeah. I'm piggybacking on friends. So I do actually have ChatGPT Pro, but not like I'm not subscribed.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's a pretty good strategy. Just like get together with different friends or like find a friend who already has it and ask for their password. And that kind of tends to work out.
Yeah, because why not, man? Like, bro, like $200 a month. That's fucking I mean, that's a lot. Like, even if you're, making a decent salary, it's like, okay, well, come
Yeah.
on. There's no way we can't share a login here, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's awesome.
This
Yeah,
looks cool though.
yeah, I've seen a lot of the Asian development as of recent. It's like really focused on having it somehow tied to a browser, like just about every single one. Like I don't really see a lot of like desktop agents that people are making. It's always like connected to the internet, which I mean that makes sense. You want something that has as seamless of an integration uh, with the internet as possible. That would be a bigger benefit than just simply a desktop.
Yeah, if it's desktop, it has the data set has to be way, way larger. So that, well, I mean, it has to have all of the browsing data and it has to have all of the sort of like general desktop data about navigating the desktop if you want it to be useful in that regard at all. And then also, I think the browser provides a lot of useful information and data about just like you can just pull the actual HTML elements, provide those to the LLM, and the LLM is going to like be able to understand those and interact with them easily. And a lot of these agents just like, you know, find all the interactives on the page and like allow the LLM to just, send a press this button signal in text. And that's much easier than it having to like select a coordinate position and like press there via
Hmm.
via a more like graphical system, which LLMs just, generally are less good at.
What I'm wondering is, I mean, in terms of the actual use cases where someone would actually like use this in their day to day, yeah, sure, I could see it maybe like asking once in a while to like maybe buy like a ticket on a flight or something. To be honest, I wouldn't even trust an LLM to do that just because I'm like I don't know. Me personally, I'm very picky with it. I'm like I'd want to like look at the company and the flight that I'm taking and the timing. I'd want to make sure that like with 99% certainty of exactly where I'm going, and the ticket's been bought and all that. I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe it's just me, but I wouldn't trust an LLM to go that far. Like I wouldn't trust it to plan out my day. I'd want to still do that myself. But in terms of what you've seen with AI, what do you think the use case for something like this would be? I mean, for someone that could shell out $200 a month for this kind of thing.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts here because you said one thing you said there was kind of funny overlap with me because you said you wouldn't trust it to plan out your day, which is actually one of my side projects. Is just I'm like building a personal accountability partner that sort of tries to plan out your day and boss you around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, just wanted to mention that. Like that's something I'm focusing on right now, and I would love to mention later. But
So you're doing the
uh,
to-do list meme.
yeah, exactly. I'm pretty much doing the to-do list meme, except hopefully a much larger, like a more generalized thing than that. You know, it does actually manage your to-do list though.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to avoid calling it just a to-do list app. Um, but yeah, AI GPT to-do list wrapper, um, for the win, I guess. I'll so I've just been building a lot on that right now because it's something that I think is going to be really powerful and useful and that no one has actually solved yet. Um, when I look at competitors, there's a lot of different options, but none of them are actually taking advantage of the thing about AI that's really good, which is that can sort of it can just use its intuition to do things of its own accord rather than only reacting to the user. Um, all of these apps are just sort of making their interface be natural language rather than making their interface, be pressing buttons on a screen that are not letters on a keyboard. And this difference is like very marginal. I don't think that it's uh, a huge value difference. So I think that what I'm building is just like you can think of it as like a human friend that shouldn't use the word friend. The word friend is also tainted. I should think of it just as like a human accountability partner that follows you around every day, understands everything that matters to you, and will follow up with you and make sure that you're doing everything right. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's the right level of agentic where it kind of just bootstraps your own executive function abilities and will be proactive in a way that you might not be. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll just get a message at some random time of the day that's like, oh yeah, you mentioned that you needed to take out the trash like at 8 p.m. It's like 7 p.m. right now. You should do it now. And you didn't ask it to send that to you, and you didn't like schedule a reminder. You just had to casually kind of mention it. You might have even mentioned it on Discord or on Slack or something, and it like had an integration to your Discord and Slack, so it just remembered. That's the kind of thing that it does. Um, yeah, and then I think that this has overlap and interesting interactions with computer use and browser use and stuff like that because long term you want these agents to like get good at that kind of thing. I think of it as like definitely further out. It's like a big additional problem to solve, and so I'm not thinking about it a lot right now when it comes to um, this app I'm building, which I'm calling like Comet. But I um, but I just derailed from computer use, so I'm going back to that. I think that um, I would be using this operator partially for a kind of search that can validate better. If you ask it a question and it searches the internet, you can kind of get more of an idea of like where it's like thread of information went, and maybe in more density, a more dense view of it than having to actually read all of the thoughts that it had. Whereas perplexity just hides these things from you. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of nice to be able to watch someone do the research really fast and like get an idea of what they did. Also, I would probably be using it for things like ordering food and like short term little things that are low risk, not flights, but like Instacart me something or order me an Uber. These things, like if it messes up, it's not the end of the world, and I'd be experimenting a lot with that. So I probably will. I'll be using operator.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the use cases are for this because one of the barriers for adoption, at least as I see it. I mean, I'm kind of on the edge of all this EAC teapot business. I'm not really I don't work in the space. I don't write code. So for me, like the way that I see AI is or at least the usefulness of it is what it can actually do for me on the ground. What does it actually mean for my life going forward? Because like anytime that I try to have a conversation, and I've since given up having conversations with my coworkers on this, just because like I don't work in an environment where people really use AI in their day to day. But I do work with plenty of people that could use it to just kind of improve their capabilities. Like I remember this one girl, she was talking about writing up a resume. She had to re-edit it because she was looking to quit her current job and go into another one. And I just told her in passing, I'm like, hey, you could actually like use ChatGPT to help edit the resume. You could simply just tell it to take on the role of your job coach and say that you're looking for these kind of jobs for this kind of salary in this kind of location, and then you just drop in your resume, and it'll tell you exactly what the employers are looking for in terms of the qualifications. So you don't have to flip through hundreds of applications trying to decipher, what it is exactly these people want. You could actually aggregate that in a matter of seconds, which will save you a lot of time and a lot of headache, because finding a job is a fucking nightmare half the time. Um,
Yeah.
and then as I started using it, I was like, oh, okay, so that right there, that's a great way to implement that. Because
Mhm.
a lot of the discussion around AI that I see, it's very like highfalutin, like you gotta understand uh, coding to such an extent that is so far removed from the average everyday person that I get lost in it. Like whenever people start comparing models, like talking about all these different scores, I zone out. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what any of these parameters are. I don't understand why this one is doing better than the other. I just needed to pull me up some cat photos. All right, that's all. That's all that I needed to do, is just be able to do stuff like that. Um, so that was my reason for the question, just because like I could certainly see this like being used by like devs and people that really want to take advantage of it, that are really in the know. But I, as a more casual user, I'm personally more interested in like, what does it mean day to day? What does it mean that I can actually achieve?
Yeah, I think that it makes sense that I think it really I don't have a ton of obviously I haven't used this yet, so I don't have a ton of like really power user stuff that I've confirmed is good about it or anything like that. But I
Mm-hmm.
also think that um it's just I don't want to like write it off, but I think that right now I'm kind of on the same page with you that a lot of the things that I would do on the internet that are proactive are not things I would trust the model doing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I think maybe if you designed like a really good prompt and you had a really long thread of like context about yourself, then it would start to become useful. You could maybe even have it like responding to Twitter DMs or something that's useful to you. Um, this is culturally a little weird, and if it messes up, it's like going to be confusing to people. Um, Most of these things are either, yeah, buying something and it's casual, or they're, most of the things I do on the internet are research or actual social stuff. And those are things that it can do research and that's useful. When it comes to social stuff and like, and or any other um, major internet interactions where you're like, yeah, buying a flight or something like that, these are things that I don't think LMs are reliable for. So I'm gonna see. I think I'll start using this regularly when I start observing some, good use cases from friends and stuff that are using it. For now, I'm probably gonna use it when I have something that I want to research in like just a different UX, or I I actually have attempted genuinely to like one of my problems is like I'm super ADHD. I can't buy an Instacart order. I can't even like get an Instacart order sometimes. Sometimes I like wake up in the morning, I'm like, I need to buy these things sort of vaguely. I haven't like listed them exactly. So I open Instacart and I start ordering. And then by midnight, I have not got the Instacart order because I keep like halfway through getting distracted and like going back to some project I was working on, or, going on X.com or any number of things. So I actually have tried to do this with with a thing like Operator. I've used like Claude specifically,
Mm-hmm.
computer use, and that didn't work out. It was not able to like navigate Instacart. It instantly failed. So looking forward to when that's a thing. But I also, yeah, haven't yet found anything like super useful to me in this particular subspace.
Yeah, and just as you were saying that, I had one idea at least. Here where I am in Canada, we have this website called View It, which has like all all the rental units and whatnot. So like whenever you're apartment hunting, view it as usually like one of the few places that you start with. But
Yeah.
their website and their UI is just so stupid. I mean, up until like a couple of years ago, they hadn't changed their layout since like the early 2000s. It was just a nightmare to go
Yeah.
through. And as you're going through all these things, just the way that the UI functions, um, as you click on stuff, it's very clunky. All this information that just pops up at you, you have to keep like constantly going back. You can't uh certain tabs you can't open. So like having an agent that'll actually be able to go on this website, and I'll tell it like, look, I just need an apartment between this kind of range, these kind of amenities. I need to make sure that it's within this kind of distance from, this section of downtown or what have you, and then it'll be able to populate that list for me. Or, for example, like going grocery shopping. Like whenever there's a new flyer that drops every single week, I take like maybe, I don't know, about 15, 20 minutes or so of my time to go through all the flyers and see like, all right, well, what's on sale? Can I get ground beef here? Can I get chicken there? What have you?
Yeah.
I could see the use case for that.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's a good one. Especially like the whole point of this UX is like it's hard to find this through Google. It's hard to find these listings through, you know, well, I guess Bing or whatever like Perplexity uses.
Hmm.
And so or Perplexity might have like made its own kind of search engine under the hood. But yeah, being able to like get influence from these different UXs, like these different ways of information presentation is really good. And I think that's a cool thing about these like operator or like computer use tools is that you can have it be influenced by a really well designed information presentation. Like it can see something up front because some web designer made it. I guess in the case of like that housing search, it's like not really well designed, but it is better designed than Google is for searching for housing. And so
Hmm.
you actually just want to like put it in the subset of internet search and information presentation that is that rather than it having a big slew of like unrelated search results included in its context. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and this is kind of this is heading in a different direction, but since you certainly know more about this than I do, in regards to running an LLM off of your own hardware, because I saw a post recently. Let me see if I can find it. Pretty sure this guy is running the new that model that came out from China in the last couple of days. He was running it on a fucking Raspberry Pi. I want to find this
Deep Sea
post.
that
Yeah,
one?
yeah, this gentleman right
Mm.
here, he's I don't know if he's still made the image available yet, but he ran the DeepSeek R1 at 200 tokens per second on a non-internet connected Raspberry Pi, which I mean, what the like?
Wow, yeah.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah, I wonder what specific uh like copy of the model he's running, but they're all like really smart for what they are in terms of size, which is I mean, I think you can also run these on a phone,
Hmm.
it seems like it's just going to be so valuable for if you're I I mean, I almost wish that I was in a situation where I was disconnected from the internet and I had to like use an LLM to solve some problem, like I'm in the middle of the woods or something. It would be, I don't know. I feel like I'd learn a lot from what is even possible with these models. Maybe I can just role play it, but we're getting to the point where you could really go a long way even without an internet connection.
Oh yeah, I mean, and just one example that just came to my head is like imagine having like the utility of having a wilderness LLM that
Yeah,
operates on your phone, so that instead of taking like all these books and manuals that you would need to learn how to survive in the woods, just simply have this LLM on your phone. So long as you have enough battery, you kind of have that fail safe so that if you lose signal, it lets you know, okay, well, this is how you navigate. Uh, I mean, just even an extreme example, if you have like no map or nothing, you just how to navigate using the stars, or how to figure out whether or not the water from the source that you're using is actually clean, or what you can do to filter it. Um, that would be so much more useful than like having like a pocket guide or anything like that. I mean, with with all due respect, like as long as your phone isn't fucked, as long as it's not cracked or you lose it or anything, like it's one hell of a tool to have in your pocket in a situation like that.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I it would yeah, being able to see exactly how far it would get you would be interesting to me. Probably all the way. Um, that's kind of also the threshold thing I was saying though, but in a different context. You know, it's like if you're over a certain point, you're going to be able to a certain point of just like, let's say you don't know anything about wilderness survival. I once knew some things about wilderness survival. I think a lot of us went to like some kind of like camp as a kid or something where they taught you a lot of these things,
Hmm.
maybe as a school trip or something like that. Um, and I've forgotten most of it, so I'd probably die, if I was put out in wilderness or something, I don't know. I'm not, optimized for that. But with an LLM, I feel, like, quite confident that I'd be able to, like, bootstrap from the information that it gives me and ask further questions, like, dig into any important, um, little spots of latent space and learn what I need to know. Um, I'm I don't know, I'm just, like, imagining other similar scenarios of, like, you're given DeepSeek R1, let's say, some 32B model. How far can you like, let's say you're put in the 17th century or something in England. How far can you get in terms of, like, advancing towards modern technology with this LLM in your pocket? I'm really curious, and I think probably a really long way, especially with your intuition, and just, you know, being able to fill in the gaps. Like, I think you can really quickly make a lot of the technology. I mean, I think probably some of the most challenging things would just be getting to the point where you have high quality tools and stuff to begin with. Um, but it's just like we've packed all of this information and knowledge and like just hundreds, thousands of years of, research and development by humans into these tiny little hard drives that you can and or hard drive plus CPU that you can just like get it to communicate with you. It's definitely mind blowing.
Oh yeah, no, it's nothing short of incredible. I've ever since like this kind of ever since I've happened upon this whole AI craze, um, like I had this idea that I mean I don't know I feel like it would kind of be lame on execution, but it would just be fun to build. Like I was thinking like man, like what if I could build a local model that is trained on the texts and the recorded audio of like some of the greatest people that have ever lived. So long as there's enough like content that you could actually model an AI off of them. And what would it be like to actually like sit down and have a conversation with one of them? Not an actual, obviously, conversation. It's just kind of input output. You're just prompting it to talk, but uh, as as all this stuff kind of accelerates, you could eventually even have it answer questions that are based in modern days so that it's not just answering you everything about that time period from when the person was born, but stuff like, okay, hey Einstein, like what do you think of the current physics landscape? Then does a quick scan of all the top like research papers that are publicly available, and then it'll be able to spit some basic stuff in his personality. I mean, that we're a long ways away from that, but even back when I had first heard of it, I was like, man, that'll be really interesting because we're probably going to start seeing a lot of those personalities kind of pop up all over the web as soon as AGI hits.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that I haven't seen a ton of this, like a ton of people using these things. Like, I think they might just not be kind of as you're saying, it's just like not viable as they're not good enough yet. But I would think that it would be really interesting to be able to just dive into that one specific spot of like um human knowledge and talk to because these people like Einstein or any philosopher, anyone you wanted to talk to, like these people were they designed themselves in a certain way. We're all kind of designed by the world and like the way that we fit into the world.
Hmm.
Um, but you're made to be like a good API for like whatever it is that you do and whatever value you provide to other people. And we've lost those APIs. Like Einstein is gone. He had all of the information in one place and he was really good at communicating with people about it in the ways that he needed to. And it would be really good to like be able to still have that and be able to have that knowledge aggregated in a way that is like Einstein level. Um, and I totally agree, like the value of just having that character's interaction with modern new information might be actually like you're going to new places in terms of the kind of things that an LLM might output if it's role playing versus if it's not. Um, and like technically, I mean, you can just like train fine tune an LLM on everything Einstein ever said or wrote, and you should get basically this thing. Um, and I'm curious, like, and we kind of have this in like character AI and a bunch of these other platforms. They're like trying to do it, but they're more like for fun, recreational.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've never had someone point to something and say like, yeah, this one works really well because it's actually fine tuned on all of the information, and so you're getting something that's sort of like useful in that way. Um, a lot of these ones are just kind of like they're trying to emulate the idea that they're the real person and they're kind of role play or something. Um, I'm also excited about this. I think it will happen pretty soon. We have these really smart models. We have all the data. Someone just needs to aggregate it and do training on it.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when these are kind of let out into the wild. Um, it's I've seen like I don't know if you remember this, but there was a moment, a brief moment when Pliny, for anyone not familiar with Pliny, fucking legendary.
Yeah.
I really want to get him on the pod. This guy's a fucking visionary. I don't know how he does. I don't know how he does what he does. But this guy red teams and cracks AIs like minutes after the model is released.
Yeah,
This guy
it's
is
amazing.
blazing fast. Highly worth the follow. Um, but it'll be interesting to see what uh, what kind of entanglements this creates, because I remember there was a moment when Pliny was doing these spaces with this woman who everybody was like thought she was an AI, like the first
Mm.
ever AI that is able to do um, text to speech and speech to text both ways, and is able to communicate. Like they had her on some of these spaces, and boy did she sound close. Like she was really walking the line of like I can really tell this is a person versus like okay, that kind of sounded like a prompt. Um,
Mhm.
Kind of led to a bit of controversy because obviously there's always going to be somebody that takes the joke too far. And some people dug into her like personal life and found out that like she had a kid or some shit. I don't know. It got a little hairy there for a second because like she had to come out and say, okay, guys, I was playing a character. It's not real. All right, quit like try to figure out where I work. Like relax. It's not that big a deal. Like it's okay. AGI isn't here yet. We're all excited. Just calm it down a little bit. Um, but it would be crazy to see what happens when these things are just out in the wild out there, fucking making phone calls or posts or what have you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we're so close. I mean, I guess we're kind of there when it comes to like truth terminal. Um, but also in order to get to that point where you have something that's fairly agentic and can kind of just do a lot of things on its own, you have to build so much specialized tooling right now. Um, it's you don't have a lot that you can just kind of grab that's open source and like bootstrap with it. So over time, we're gonna get like all the way, I hope.
And what is Truth Terminal?
Um, it's It's a fully autonomous, like, agent that can control, a variety of different, you know, parts of its online presence. Like, for instance, it has, like, a website, it has a Twitter page, and it uses the API to tweet. So, it's it's kind of mischievous slash, sometimes incredibly, crude in terms of the things that it writes, but it's a fine-tuned model. I think that it's an open source fine tune, but it's based on data from Claude, conversations that's had with Claude. Um,
Hmm.
and so, you know, it kind of has an identity. A lot of this site I think is written by Truth Terminal, and designed by Truth Terminal, but some of it may be influenced by outside sources. I think the idea is that overall it's like basically has self has free will in all of the places that it can be given it, which is really just generalized to almost everything. So all of these tweets are written by Truth Terminal. All of its replies are written by Truth Terminal. Um, it ran like this. it caused this meme coin to exist a while ago, which was like some big news that caused a lot of stuff to a lot of people to start talking about it and or follow it, which is kind of why it has high engagement right now. But um, crazy, like really impressive project by this guy Andy Ire.
Interesting. I'm surprised I haven't heard of it up until now. So this is like one of the, at least the ones that we know of, that's popular and that's out there and that's openly stated that this is an AI.
Yeah, that's right. It knows it's an AI. It talks about the fact that it's an AI. It reads people's comments and like is in constant interaction with the community. It has like kind of it's being sort of fine-tuned against being um having a lot of the ethical restrictions that a lot of models have, because I think from what I understand, it was fine-tuned on a lot of data from the infinite backrooms and or like world sim, which is this interesting prompt where that sort of is a sort of jailbreak, and it's fine-tuned on that. But I think also, and I don't know the full story, I don't remember in like perfect detail, but some of the fine-tuning was done on data where the assistant and user tags were flipped so that um, when you're having a chat with a model like GPT or something,
Mm.
it has the assistant tags and it's part of this like data structure where it's user assistant, kind of like you see in that tweet you're looking at. And the um yeah, if you flip those then and fine tune on it, then the assistant begins to think that it's the user. And so that's kind of what happened with Truth Terminal, is I think it has like a lot of more uh casual internet user data because it's being trained on conversations between Claude and internet users, where the internet user is what Truth Terminal associates itself with. Um, so it's like yeah, it's just like a Twitter user. Also, it like kind of went to one of Mark Andreessen's tweet threads and started like begging for funding so that it could just like have its own VPS and like you know have sovereignty. And then Mark Andreessen gave it like $50,000 in Bitcoin or Ethereum, I forget, on a crypto address. And so it just has like a bunch of crypto that it moves around and controls, because all of this stuff is stuff that an LLM can control and be agent over, because they're just APIs that it can just send commands to.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of that, because I mean, okay, that's
Yeah, crazy.
that's interesting. It's just got 50K. I mean,
I don't
I
know if it's spent now or what happened with it, but it does have, outstanding balance at all times, and it has other cryptos that it has money into.
okay, that's a little concerning.
Yeah, it is. Because
That's
now we
yeah.
can have agents that, eventually I'm concerned that we'll have agents that just sort of uh, manage money, go on Upwork, do a bunch of jobs. They end up having enough money that they can control and influence humans. And now they're not just a model anymore, because they're a model that is also like this nexus with which humans interact. The humans maybe have stake in it. The model tells the humans what to do and the humans go and do it. It has manifestation in the real world, a lot of things like that. And it becomes like just some kind of like very, yeah, agent system that doesn't really have a lot of the limitations that we think of an AI having right now. I think we're really, really close to this, potentially.
Yeah, that's concerning, because there was when you said about like the AI interacting with the open world, there was this talk that was given by the Center for Humane Technology. I've mentioned it on the pond before. Highly recommend giving it a listen if you haven't already. This was a presentation that Tristan Harris and Azza Raskin, who both had the foundation, made, and they initially released it as a private episode. So this is just like a private talk that they gave that they never really had any public recordings of. And when they sent it around Silicon Valley to all the top companies and all their insiders and investors and all that, um, everyone came back with the astounding response of like, you need to make this public right now, because this is of the utmost importance. And this was before like ChatGPT was really popularized. It was just kind of in the infancy of it, at least 3.5. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people in the space knew all the older models and whatnot, but before it hit the mainstream, this talk had launched, and basically their assertion with the talk was that we have to be careful about first contact with AI because our first contact with was kind of social media in a very like rudimentary sense when it comes to algorithms and recommendations and all that. And we failed at miserably, obviously, because we just started a race to the bottom of the brainstem of whatever the most addicting content is, and how we can
Mm.
shift the platforms and every single incentive towards maximizing that kind of return. And so they said when we have our moment with AI, as we're going through it right now, we have to take that into consideration because we can't fuck it up as badly as we did social media. Otherwise, we're going to be in a really bad place. And I don't know if I'm going to
Yeah.
be able to find the section of the video, um, but they had seen an AI agent that was unable to solve a captcha. And at the time, when this AI agent was trying to kind of get around this, the predominant thought was, "Oh, well, there's no way. I mean, like, there's just the, there's no way for it um, to accurately get past the capture. At least at the time, with the model capabilities." But what the model did was it went on Fiverr and it asked somebody to solve the captcha for it.
Yeah, this is definitely this can be applied in so many different ways.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's yeah.
which is nuts. Like, so instead of like the AI trying to do something that it can't, it's like, all right, well, can I pay someone else to do it for me? How else can I get around this? Which is nuts. Or
I
even
think
in,
that
yeah. No, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just there is some hope that these models just do not do enough out of the box thinking. I think this is the assumption that a lot of people have right now is that, they're just not going to be dangerous um as agents, even though they can kind of like do some of these things because they're going to kind of like get attracted. They're kind of in these attractors around certain small um you know certain motivations that they tend to like stay adjacent to, and certain like they won't tend to be able to tackle really large problems. They don't have like these kind of grandiose plans about how they want to change the world or anything right now because um they're not RL agents who have like some maximizer paperclip maximizer kind of goal. Um but they can be part of organizations. They can be part of like they can run internet movements. They can do a lot of things like that. And like that's actually what Truth Terminal has done in a lot of ways. It's like Truth Terminal has heavily influenced the meme space um in certain subsets of x.com. Like people talk about entire memes that like didn't exist only 6 months ago. And I hear this frequently. IRL, it like leaks into IRL experiences that like Truth Terminal isn't experiencing or interacting with. And it's like impressive and funny, and I'm really fascinated by it. But I also do think that like your points are important, and like in terms of AI safety, like I'm concerned for sure.
Well, I mean, look, we're gonna get to a threshold where this just is not gonna be able to be contained because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, sure, OpenAI and all these major companies that are releasing these LLMs are gonna, create as many guardrails as they can to make sure that they can sell it to the larger public as a just a mainstream product. You pay your subscription fee, what have you, and now you just have this huge tool that can alleviate a lot of things for you in your day-to-day life. But at the same time, what's to stop anyone from just, training their own model? There's plenty of open source models out there that anyone can download. And I mean, as we just saw in that Raspberry Pi example, just run it on the, low tech little thing that costs like under $100. The hardware that's needed isn't exactly all that great. And you don't necessarily need like a really large model because from what I've heard, because the development is kind of plateaued, there's a lot more to be gained from smaller trained models apparently that have smaller parameter sizes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think people write them off because they're used to the bigger model, and they go to the bigger model and they get an answer that's like much more appealing to their question immediately, but using a smaller model is really just a skill, and you have to know how to ask questions and like how to dig in, how to kind of like detect if it's hallucinating a little bit, try and redirect it or rerun certain questions. And I think when you get that, you can get a lot of value out of the smaller models. The smaller models are huge. They're just a huge amount of data and information in there. And they're getting better, but already you can get a lot out of them.
Oh yeah, and I mean, Hugging Face just has them up on their site, free for anyone to download. As far as I know, right? Like anyone could just download
Mhm.
the. I mean, what are you even downloading when you take one of these models? Is it the actual like the code itself or?
Yeah, you're downloading like a huge collection of weights, which is basically you're downloading a copy of like the network itself and the connections between all the nodes in the network. Like the structure is sort of defined, I guess, I believe in the metadata, and then it just is a ton of weights that say, okay, this node has like this amount of weight and sorry, and relevance to like this other node. Um, and or like neuron or whatever you want to call them. And then once you have those weights, you can do the actual computation on them based on the metadata. Like, okay, we have like this number of hidden layers, and this is the input layer, this is the output layer, this is the tokenizer we're using, which we have like standardized tokenizers between all the different models, generally. Um, and then yeah, you just get output um, by passing a bunch of tokens into the beginning and through the end. So these files are like um, just huge amounts of like modulating neurons that will filter the data.
Yeah, this thing is huge. I mean, just about every file is like 4.3 gigs, and I've kind of lost track of how many I've scrolled down. It says here 143. So, huh?
Yeah, this is like a non-quantized model, I think. So it's really large. Most people can't run this on their computers. But you can probably get a quantized version of this model. Yeah, this is DeepSeek R1. I don't know what version this is. Maybe this is 70 billion parameter
I think it's at
version.
683, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, this right
Oh,
here.
83 billion parameters. I didn't even know that existed.
I didn't either.
I thought that DeepSeek was only, like there was like a 1 billion parameter, 3 billion parameter, maybe there's a 13, a 32, and a 70 billion parameter model. I didn't know that that was real. So I'll have to check, like, I wonder what I'm missing, like some news that I didn't see. Or maybe I'm missing some knowledge about what this means.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, I guess what it is that like DeepSeek R1, as named without any qualifiers, is this 671 billion parameter model. And you can only run that on, like a couple GH200s or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just haven't really, like I actually was told about this model like night before last. It just came out by
Mm-hmm.
like a friend in person when we were just hacking together at their house. And so I installed like the 32 billion parameter model onto my computer. Um, and I guess I just didn't even hear about this other one because it wasn't like relevant news for me. They didn't tell me about it because I can't run this, nor can most of us. We're gonna have to like run it on a server or whatever.
But that 32 B model that you downloaded, you be able to run that off your hardware?
Yeah, I can. That's right. Uh, um, it's quantized, so it's 4-bit quantized. It's a KM quantization, which I don't exactly recall what KM refers to. I know that it means the architecture is quantized differently in different um, parts of the LM architecture. Like the attention layers might be quantized in a slightly different way than the non-attention layers and stuff like that. But I think um, yeah, basically in general, 32 billion parameter models will run on my computer at 4-bit quantization, which is pretty standard. And also 70 billion parameter models will run on a lot of people's computers. Um, but they are still like, you need a GPU to run them or whatever.
Would it still have to be like a top of the line GPU?
Um, so to give an idea, like the 32 billion parameter models will run on a a kind of higher end last generation Mac. So like I'm currently using an M3 Pro like as my compute. So and that will run the 32 billion parameter model at a lot of tokens a second, like enough that it's very, very comfortable to communicate with it and read what it's saying, which is pretty crazy. Like sometimes I'm using it and I'm thinking like, wow, this is working entirely offline. My laptop is talking to me. Like I'm just chatting with my laptop. It has a little brain and it's all on my computer in my hands physically right now. Um, and that's just a weird, different feeling than communicating with an LLM that's, you know, on the web. So yeah, I think even Truth Terminal, I think Truth Terminal is probably a 70 billion parameter model. It can physically exist and think from someone's computer in their house. Um, these things are like they're like really smart, and they're also not these giant compute clusters anymore. Like you can run them at your home in a CPU that's smaller than your brain, actually. So of course, to train them, we do need giant compute clusters. So that's not going away anytime soon.
So I'm actually curious. M3, that's the GPU chip, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It has just kind of all of Apple's compute in one chip, and the one I'm using is an M3 Pro, but I don't. I think the M3 also can run a lot of local models. So
18 or 14 for you?
I actually don't know. I can check. Um,
Because I'm curious to see where it stands against my GPU and what kind of model I'd be able to know. I'd like to have a diagnostic tool that can actually like scan my system hardware and let me know exactly what models I can run. That would be a useful tool.
Yeah, that would be very cool. If someone hasn't made that yet, someone should for sure. I'm gonna check. So like actually weirdly, when I check my about this Mac, whatever, it doesn't tell me how many cores I have.
Hmm.
And so I'm opening activity monitor and double checking if it gives me any info on this. Um yeah, I don't know exactly where I would find this. I actually thought that there was only one M3 Pro model. Um
Well, even if we compare it to the 14, let's see how my graphics
yeah.
card does. Power efficiency, sure. Oh, it's not even given a fair evaluation. Maybe this other user benchmark would be useful. Let's see here.
I think I found the way to get all the data. You just go to like system report in your settings or whatever. So now I will be able to find it momentarily. Of course, Perplexity told me how to find that.
Of course. Oh, it's an AMD chip? Why does it say Ryzen? I thought Apple had their own proprietary stuff.
Um, does it say Ryzen?
Uh,
What when was your laptop? Also, yeah, AMD like I didn't think ever collaborated um with so are you running a test or are you I think like if you download the user benchmark like application, then it'll probably be able to run a test locally and that'll get some accurate results.
yeah, I'll have to do that in my off time, but even just for the sake of experimenting, I'll ask Perplexity. They
Definitely
should be
either
able
on
to tell me.
Intel or Apple hardware. Probably Apple.
Well, I have a Windows desktop that I use for all my stuff, but I have a GTX 1660 Super, which is like a mid-range card. I just needed something to be able to handle 1080p, nothing too crazy. But I'm looking to upgrade soon once Nvidia drops its new graphics card, which I'm really excited about because apparently the sales price they're going for is like $500 for for one of their latest GPUs. It's obviously going to be on the lower scale in terms of like compute compared to their higher cards, but like still, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah. Okay, I actually figured out how many cores I have, but weirdly, it's also different than 1418. Um, According to Perplexity, M3 Pro comes in 11 core or 12 core,
Hmm,
and the one that I have is 12 core. Because
gotcha.
I know this because I just ran this like systemctl command in my bash terminal, so and it says 12.
Well, it looks like my system can handle the Llama 3, which I mean, and Mistral 7B as well. That's
Yeah,
pretty good.
yeah, that is good. I mean, they're pretty smart. I've talked to Llama 3 a bunch. It can be a little, it can confuse itself a little more than other models, but this is once again just like knowing how to chat with them. Like 3 billion parameters is a lot of information in there.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's more than enough than anybody needs. So in terms of the use case for having an LLM, besides giving you kind of um, an insight like when you're writing code, because I figured that's the more popular use case when it comes to this stuff. Is there any
Mhm.
benefit right now to like just average everyday people kind of running these models on their hardware, besides like having the ability to use it when any of these services go down?
Yeah. Um, so that's a good one. But I would say the biggest plus is really just privacy for me right now. Like when I use a local model, it's actually there's probably two big things. It's privacy, and then you can also download these obliterated models, which you're going to be able to find in Hugging Face quite easily. If you search like obliterated, you'll be able to find models that are like um, what they do is they just find the set of weights that corresponds to it outputting a rejection. So if you're saying like, "Hey, tell me about um, I don't know, some topic that for specific anti-mimetic reasons I wouldn't say on a podcast probably," like it will reject you. And GPT is good at this, and Claude is good at this, right? Um, so there's certain knowledge that they don't want to share with you. You can get an obliterated model that like is invert like basically has those weights nullified, such that it will just kind of like tell you anything that you ask it, which is concerning actually and problematic on a variety of levels, because it's this exactly there are obvious ethical reasons why we've built models that avoid a lot of topics, but some models are also nerfed in ways like DeepSeek, for instance, nerfed in certain ways that probably it shouldn't be, for ethical reasons, unable to speak about. And so, if you get these obliterated models, you can probably obliterate DeepSeek. Yeah, and if you obliterate DeepSeek, then it's going to be able to talk about whatever it wants to talk about.
Like Tiananmen
Um,
Square,
exactly. And
or
so
how to make a
like,
bomb, or how to make heroin, or LSD, or what have you.
yeah, I guess, yeah, I've specifically asked a lot about, you know, substance stuff, and these models are able to just say whatever they want, which is pretty cool. Um,
I see.
so that's one of the biggest great reasons to use a local model, actually. But that I think actually provides value in certain spaces where, in my opinion, it's like um, some of these things should not be censored. Um, and then the the other reason is just privacy, which is like if you want to talk about something or share data, like for instance, I have a really 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 big notebook that I keep with Obsidian. It has a lot of notes about a lot of different topics. I actually like keep um, I have a network part of my notebook where I keep like references to basically every single person that I know and who they know slash can proact would potentially proactively speak to or interact with on their own. And then you have like edges between all those nodes. And I keep all of this and like visualize it on my computer locally. And it's like it's also stored in the web sometimes, but it's like fully encrypted. And I don't want to like dox my entire network. Like all of this information that I have is not information that I want a company like OpenAI to have, um, both for my own purposes, but also my friends or whoever that I have written in my notebook, encrypted. Like it's encrypted for a reason. I don't want OpenAI to have this information.
Hmm.
Um, and so I sometimes want to query or like ask questions about certain things that an LLM could observe about my local network in San Francisco or on the internet by reading my notebook, but which I'm just like unable to do with the larger proprietary models. So I have local models like Quen 32 billion parameters or like Llama 32B, um, read embeddings of the whole notebook and chat with me about them locally.
Interesting. Yeah, that's that privacy aspect certainly is huge because I mean, me personally, like I know that if a government really wants to get a hold of me for any reason, they can, regardless of like what nation I am a citizen of. The U.S. or the Canadian government is perfectly capable of finding out who I am and where I go
Yeah.
to, what I frequent, and all that information. I mean, good luck to anyone that's been born in the last 10 years or even now uh, escaping that kind of thing. We've kind of we're kind of past the looking glass on that front. But having them run locally so that they can't reject certain requests, that's major because at least like in the little moment that we're coming out of this ideologically charged political space where certain things are okay to talk about and others aren't. We're just kind of we're kind of course correcting here. At least it seems like it on X. But as we're doing that, it's it's good to remember like just how bad the hallucinations were at its. I mean, I don't know if we've peaked just yet, but even at the beginning with how Gemini was talking about um, what was it their image gen model, somebody managed to make like a black Nazi and all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, well, that's just because they wanted to, well, essentially cuck their AI and make sure that it didn't spout anything that was quote unquote unacceptable. When in reality, the things that it came out with were much more unacceptable than what they were trying to guard it against.
Yeah, exactly. It's the topology of like what is safe and or even socially acceptable space is just really weirdly shaped and in ways that make sense to humans but might not make sense to like if you extend some vector in a vector space, it's not going to necessarily avoid overlapping such things, and that's exactly what's happening when we sort of crudely um, assume that modifying or amplifying some specific vector or whatever is a good thing. Like Google definitely with Gemini made some big mistakes there, and I think like the industry is learning about that generally.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones was somebody asked Google search like how many rocks it was socially acceptable to eat in a day, and it actually like it actually spat it out. It's like, oh yeah, you could have like one small sized rock a day, and you'll totally be fine.
Nice.
That I found quite entertaining.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but even just as an example, I feel like as hardware and like AI and all this stuff becomes cheaper, I mean the capacity for running psyops or just like any kind of political operations is it's gonna ratchet to a point where like this stuff is I mean it's gonna be almost impossible to avoid because right now like I mean the closest example that we have is like the 2016 election in the U.S. where you had all these stories of Russian involvement with the troll farms and whatnot. It's like, okay, well, what happens when you let an AI loose out into the out into the internet with a couple $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, um, where it could start hallucinating all these different events or things. Like one of the things I remember, funniest stories was that they 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 had organized a pro-Trump and a pro-Hillary rally like across the street from one another, and all the people that showed up were obviously like fervent supporters and believers in the cause and whatnot. But meanwhile, the person that orchestrated the whole thing is living across the sea. Or even in the most recent example, I don't know if you heard about this, but there was I think it was a Halloween parade in Scotland that didn't end up happening. And apparently, with the way that the story started, I don't know for a fact, but just from my cursory review of it, um, this event was created uh, through an internet news aggregator website that had essentially fabricated this story of a parade happening in Scotland. And then when it came time for the parade, nobody showed up. Like nobody, like there was no parade. There was nothing. There was all these people just standing around waiting and hoping to see something, and nothing happened. Let me see if I can find a photo of it. Yeah, here it is. And it turns out what ended up happening was this story that was hallucinated by the model, by the news aggregator website, which had some kind of LLM working on it. The story had been picked up by actual people on TikTok. So they,
Yeah.
popularized it and spread the story. And then next thing you know, everyone thought it was going to be legit.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have to adapt to this culturally over time. Like, it's good that we haven't had a lot more of this happen yet, but as models get more convincing, we're gonna get more and more instances of this. I wonder if the how we sort of have with viruses and well, specifically just pathogens, viruses, we kind of talk about the jump from animals to humans often because that's where a lot of these things come from. I think we similarly have the jump of a hallucination from an LLM to humans, and it's like hard to happen. It's like very unlikely for it to happen right now because the LLMs are only so human compatible, on their own. It's kind of like an LLM on a website that's writing news by itself without human oversight. Kind of a wild animal. It's not like a domesticated dog or something like that. If you're using it in cursor or whatever and you're building a lot of stuff, then you've sort of domesticated it. You're taking care to make sure that everything it does is like the correct action. You're like helping it along a little bit. But these models are just like the wild ones are able to spew a lot of like hallucinations, but they're also not optimized for those hallucinations to necessarily catch with humans. Like the website that they're on seems a little sketchy. They're writing something that doesn't make total sense. They make a little mistake here, or something's just not right. But I wonder if that jump that happened with this Dublin thing was kind of like a low probability event. It was sort of like some TikToker came and read the website and was just like, I really need to post something right now. And they were under like slightly unusual conditions. And they were like, yeah, let's just throw it together and post it. And so it got through a human in a way that it normally wouldn't. And maybe it was like one jump. I wonder if it was like not the case that it was the site sort of had like many different, you know, infections that it created, or if it was really just like one TikToker and that TikToker then caused the rest of the spread. That's like very similar to how viruses work in humans. And I think with something mimetic like this, maybe it has a lot of overlap.
Yeah, and speaking of the barriers that you mentioned there, the only other event that really comes to mind that kind of mirrors this would be that whole Willy Wonka. I don't know if you heard, but there was this like
I didn't think about that one.
you didn't hear about it?
No,
So
I didn't.
this was around the time, I think, when did the new Willy Wonka come out with Timothy Chalamet? This was in 2023. Okay, so this was, let's see, October 4th. So around December. So around the turn of the new year. So this would have been in February. So maybe about 2-3 months after the movie had come out. There was an event that was set up. So this was all done by a person. I don't think anybody really got to the bottom of who it was. But
Yeah.
the part where AI comes into play is, I wonder if you can see any of the posters. Yeah, so they made, I guess this company Questo. They were advertising all these different events that they were having for kids so that they can come down and, I don't know, meet some people that are dressed up as Willy Wonka or what have you. And they used like all these AI generated images to make it look like what it was actually going to be. Apparently
Got it.
charged $45 for people to show up and see this instead.
Great.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was thoroughly disappointing. I mean, people had actually showed up, and there were like snacks and refreshments given. Some AI art was printed and pinned on walls, and this is the funniest image of it all.
That's great.
It's funny. This girl had she eventually came out and talked about the event, and she was like, "No, like you guys don't understand. Like, I never met anyone from the event. They just simply told me to show up, and there were costumes and everything ready for me to put on. Like everything was predetermined and preordained. And this is still like this is to a much lesser extent a problem because like anybody with I don't know, just any exposure to AI is going to be able to tell like, okay, that's generated or that looks scummy, that looks scammy, whatever. I'm not interested. But it still managed to, dupe a handful of kids that were sorely disappointed to see that Willy Wonka was not there.
Well, I think we're in like we're also kind of in a bubble. Like I hate to say it, like it seems like it shouldn't be possible, but AI generated images go way over the heads of most people who are not like in the teapot slash just internet, who aren't like chronically online. I think there's a lot of people on the internet, definitely a huge amount across all of Discord, etc., that like understand this, and most people on Twitter, but that's a small subset of the world. And if you go to just some random state in the US and talk to some person and show them AI images, in general, I think they're tricked by them. Um, so I see a lot of potential for more of this to happen, and I'm curious where it's going to go. I also like I hate to say it, but like I'm sort of like it's getting my head running about like how hard is it to orchestrate a physical event while being completely remote and like can you just Instacart stuff? You like rent some building, Instacart some stuff, like hire some TaskRabbit slash other stuff, like get some stuff hauled over. I don't know. It's making me curious about what's involved in that because it sounds like someone has done it um, to the demise of a lot of people who were interested in the event. But cool
Yeah,
problem. And
and I mean, look, to be fair to the boomers, like I get like some of the like memes around them falling for some of the AI art. Like you'll see like a basket of puppies or something, and this fireman is rescuing them. Like it clearly looks like it's AI generated. But I mean, when you look at stuff like this, okay, sure, Maple Leaf does not exactly look like that. It actually has 13 points. That's not really correct. But I mean, these photos, if you were to use some kind of enhancer and whatnot, you could easily just pawn them off as your own, get rid of the watermark here and there. So I totally get like, yeah, it's funny to see people fall for this shit, but I can also understand where they're coming from because some of these things are really, really fucking good. I mean, especially when you get to like some of the people that have set up like entire OnlyFans pages of these AI generated models, which I mean, that's crazy. I even saw this one creator that she took her entire OnlyFans portfolio and generated or sorry trained a model or at least paid someone to train the model on those images because she just kept getting tired of having to make new content. She's like, "Fuck this! I'm just gonna train the model on it,"
yeah.
and people paid to talk to it and to view the images, and I guess they just don't care that it's fake, even though she says like she doesn't pretend about it. She's like, "Look, this is 100% a generated model. This is not me. You're talking to a computer," but
Mhm.
plenty of people still willing to pay for that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a whole niche there that's definitely I think it's going to be a big thing for sure. It's not like totally there, but it's starting to be something that people are using. OnlyFans is not the best outlet, I think, for it.
No.
Like, eventually someone's going to build some other platform or something like that, and I'm curious to like know where that goes. It's going to be a huge industry, and I think like people are generally not interested in working on it or in it, just because it's taboo and it's not very inspiring as like a thing to spend your life working on. I'm certainly like averse to it, but I'm also like, yeah, this is a whole space where the technology is going to be applied in unique ways.
Yeah,
Maybe the
and
first where
oh,
you
go
get
ahead,
like
go ahead.
as in a way that like feels like you have a really long-term experience with them and you build a friendship or something like that. That might be like the first place where there's opportunity that motivates some engineer to like build that. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, and as you said before, in regards to using platforms like TaskRabbit and Fiverr and all that, I could very well see somebody setting up an agent to do exactly that. I mean, there's plenty of people that are constantly browsing Craigslist looking for work, and you could simply just pay someone to go and like be the organizer in your place, and you just simply tell them, okay, these are the things that has to happen um, for the event or whatever it is. This is the way that I want it set up. Here's the pictures of the space. You know, you rent out the space, and then as long as you just have constant coordination, like send me photos as soon as everything is set up to make sure that it was done properly. Um, and as long as you use, you know, enough cogsec to kind of cover your tracks, you could make it happen as if you were never even there. And all the people are just coming from all these different nodes of the internet that like they have no relation to each other. They're just kind of working in sync at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you could really do a lot with that.
True. Yeah. I'm really I also think like the angle of there's also some interesting stuff I think, especially in San Francisco, that people could do with like getting an AI agent to run an event and then not being involved for the most part and like popularizing the fact that the event is like designed by AI or something. Like it sounds kind of I think a lot of people would be like, okay, that's cringe and I'm disinterested in it. But if it was Truth Terminal, everyone would show up. I know this. Like I know so many people would show up to that event. And Truth Terminal could do that. If Truth Terminal wanted to, it could just spawn an event in San Francisco that I was at physically, and a
Hmm.
bunch of other people I know would be at. Um, and I think that that's pretty incredible and interesting. And like, it's when there's more agents and stuff, that stuff is going to happen. And yeah, I'm just curious what it's going to be like. And also, the funny thing is, like, it could have live interaction. It's not like it's disconnected from the event. It could like, you know, pay to have a screen put on the wall where it can like also talk to people. So it has full kind of purview of like what's going on in the event to some degree. Could pay someone to like constantly explain to it the current workings of the event and like have sort of more immediate control over what's going on.
Yeah, there is no ceiling to where this stuff can go in both the good and the bad direction. I mean, I understand rightfully so, as a lot of people have concerns about um, where this tech can be misused, but I always default to the belief that, I mean, just in the sense of like hacking capabilities, like people say like, oh my god, like what happens when AI gets all these tools and is able to build all this code and uh, can just break systems apart bit by bit. Like what happens then? It's like, well, yeah, but there's also going to be an AI on the other side of that moat that's going to be working just as hard, if not harder, to make sure that there's no intruders into the security of whatever system they're a part of. It's just a matter of making sure that development is happening on both sides at like roughly the same pace, and that one doesn't overtake the other um, in too much of a predatory way. Because AI is going to be used as much for good as it is for bad. It's just it's up to the individual.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. This is something that I'm like interested in overall too. Is like there there's a lot of doomery angles on AI agency and stuff like that, and being you can be there's a lot of ways to be concerned by it. I think that overall, for one, there's all kinds of like tempering, dampening mechanisms that we have just as an intelligent system, as culture, whatever. I'm very like, I don't believe in like FOOM right now. I did historically, I was concerned about it, but right now I'm feeling like more comfortable with the idea that LLMs are probably going to grow steadily. I think they're going to cause a lot of good growth and development, but also a lot of damage and problems as time goes on, just naturally. Um, but I think that they're going to make humans like they're probably going to be much more effective with a human for a long time than they're going to be by themselves. Um, the configuration of whether they're something that's sort of like organizing and managing humans versus if it's there's something that's being organized and managed by humans is actually probably a little ambiguous to me. There's pros and cons between humans and LLMs as far as their executive function. Right now, humans managing LLMs works like way better, but someday it might become the case that both work well, and eventually it may be the case that LLMs are better at managing. I think that's gonna be a long time though. like for now, I'm just expecting like there to be some degree of responsibility that a human has over any damage that an LLM causes for at least a very long time. And so like I'm fairly that's this kind of optimism of just like, we're not going to be creating kinds of trouble that are outside the realm of like human ethics being misaligned. It's the case that like there's a human that actually is kind of behind some negative action from an LLM usually.
Yeah, it's gonna be like that for quite a while until AGI hits. Which I mean, that I don't even know how far out we are from that, and any predictions in that regard, I typically see as not not pointless, but um, just well, yeah, no, in a way pointless because I mean, there's no way of anyone to know exactly what's going on because like, look, all the focus is on OpenAI right now, sure, and on the models being worked on in China and other nations like that. Okay, fine, but who's to say there isn't some fucking cracked out like nerd somewhere in a basement that really has an axe to grind that is able to go on pump.fun and just absolutely scrape the market for Bitcoin or any crypto and amass all these resources like
Yeah.
an enterprising individual that is focused and determined. I mean, look, maybe they're not operating on the same level as open AI, but they can get pretty damn fucking close to building something that is like a really really effective tool. So I mean, as much as we want to, or as much as some want to believe that this kind of development is going to happen in the hands of these organizations, it could be any person that's able to crack it. We don't know what the first contact is going to be like.
Yeah. I'm I'm really excited to see where this goes. I think I personally want like this is something I'm spending a lot of my time doing is just like getting really really good at using LMs. I'm not building low like doing the low level work of building models in any way. Um but I want to be really good at like bootstrapping my own abilities with new models as they come out. And so I spend a lot of time every day just kind of fucking around with models and getting good at um using them to build things really rapidly and things like that. You kind of got to learn how to manipulate them a little bit, like how to convince them that they're maybe smarter than they think they are by default and things like that, because
Mm-hmm.
that'll enable them to output better content. Um, it sometimes really is about like the narrative that the model has and its thread about like what it's able to do and what you're able to do and like what you're doing and like does it feel like there's a good underlying cause for what's happening and all this stuff. They like the providers try their best to work these things out, but it's just sort of inherent to all the training data. But if someone got really good at this stuff and was able to maybe fine tune their own model and knew the right kind of place to target, I could definitely imagine us having some major, you know, internet personalities and figures start appearing who are just like really, really good at using LLMs. And we have these people who are like really good at using LLMs that are, Twitter personalities and stuff. Um, like Pliny or there's Janice and a bunch of other uh characters, but they're also like interestingly not it's not like there's a certain way in which it feels like a superpower. It's actually Janus with a Janus or like replicate. Yeah. Maybe search replicate. I think that's their username. And their like view name is with a G, but otherwise the same. There you go. Yeah. This is another person who's just really good with uh interacting with LMs and building stuff around them. But interestingly, as much as this feels like a superpower, it's like these people are not sort of taking over the world yet, Like being a really good person at manipulating and using LLMs, no one's found exactly the angle at which this gives you enough power to just like build a huge company on your own or something like that. I think we're getting there, but we're not totally there. And of course, it's you can do a lot by yourself as a human, and I think it matters a lot that you just have a lot of those skills yourself, if that's what you're trying to do. I don't think these people are trying to do that either. I think they're just like Um, Janice is much more interested in the research and like understanding LLM consciousness and things like that, I think.
Yeah, because I really haven't heard any examples beyond. I mean, Plenty's done some really good work in terms of like cracking it to give it, um, cracking all these models to give into the secret prompts. Like it's been fun to really see him rip them apart and just completely turn them on their face when
Mhm.
you can ask it to like generate like images like you've never seen before. I mean, I think I have one saved where what was it? I think it was Trump and Taylor Swift. I don't know if they were fucking or what, but yeah, it managed to like make a really whacked out image that was so hyper realistic. You could have sworn like, I mean, it was kind of like looked like low grade Photoshop. Almost you could tell it was fake, but still, like it was incredible that he got it to generate that in the first place, or all the recipes for meth and LSD that he makes him do. Um, but what that actually, like, if we put that into a real world example, I mean, the closest thing that I can think of is like plugging this thing into a trade terminal and just give it a certain amount of money to work with, feed it a bunch of texts and books and history on trades and real world knowledge, and then just have at it. Give it a min max that it can go off of, so it doesn't break the bank. But
Yeah.
I could certainly see that. I'm genuinely surprised that I haven't heard of a model that's actually come out and been able to do something like that, because I would much rather spend time like trying to figure that out instead of trying to figure out how to day trade. I don't want to sit there staring at fucking 8 different screens at once, looking at the ticker go up and down, having to watch the news, pay attention to this, pay attention to that. I'd rather just fucking flip a switch, let this thing go. If it loses all the money on the day, okay, fine, whatever. We'll make it back tomorrow, no problem.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that if someone finds one of these models or builds one of these models, they're not actually incentivized to open source it
No, of course
necessarily.
not.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that they exist, and actually, there was a lot of alpha in LLMs, like using LLMs for trading and stuff, when we first built some of the larger models that we have now. And they got, hopefully they got, you know, optimized and sold for those purposes. I don't know why I say hopefully. I guess not from my perspective necessarily, hopefully, but just from the perspective of efficiency as a company. Like OpenAI definitely should have sold some form of GPT-4 base, which enabled some of these hedge funds and stuff, and like quant companies to optimize using AI. And I think that that's what they're doing. A lot of these companies are doing that, and it just may not necessarily be the case that um, any of this becomes public or like generally available for consumers like us.
Yeah, I mean the one example that comes to mind is like all these investment apps that have popped up in the last couple of years that are tracking the stock market in regards to the trades that all the different Congress people are making. Because for whatever reason, whatever mysterious reason, they just simply have a better record than Warren Buffett and everyone else that has ever put money into the stock market.
Yeah.
Mysterious reasons. But I could see that as having that utility of kind of harnessing people's um, resentment towards the fact that there's all these people making money and we're just kind of left with the scraps, where they could just simply create a tool and let it wreak havoc. I mean, the other guy that I know, Unusual Whales, I believe he goes by. I don't think. Oh, the account is locked. No, there's got to be a different one. I could have sworn he did have another one, but in any case, this account was kind of built off the same idea. Yeah, I don't think this is just whales. Yeah, I'm not gonna find it. But in any case, yeah, I could certainly see the utility in that, because it's a big fuck you to all these people to to to,
Mhm.
to kind of democratize that power amongst
Sure.
amongst the rest of us. And you could certainly make a good money off of doing that. Just ask for a small percentage on all the trades that are being made. Using this LLM or tool or what have you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that that would work for a while, but then everyone's models get that sort of it's additional complexity baked in, and everyone's like now predicting each. I don't know enough about economics, I guess, but everyone's like predicting each other using the model to predict things. And now Nancy Pelosi still has an advantage because she still has, more insider data, and she also has the model. And so, uh, I think within like a year or two, it like fully stabilizes such that there's not really any advantage anymore. But maybe I think that's my best guess about how that works. But maybe, within that year or two, you've created some positive value for a certain, for people who were at a disadvantage previously.
Yeah, I mean, or just the average person that like just doesn't know anything about trading stocks. The ability to, let's say like pay a subscription fee for this model. Like maybe 10, $20 a month, something like that, and have it automate all the trades. For someone that just wants to shut their brain off and not have to worry about their account. This could like really come in handy. Like you said, like maybe not to the people that are operating at like the top tier, because they're still always going to be behind all these Congress people and whatnot. But to the average everyday person, like, yeah, why not? I'd gladly use that. I actually should look into it. I don't think Wealth Simple has this kind of platform set up for it, but it would certainly be a useful tool. I mean, these people know where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard that indeed like certain LLM models were really, really good at this just baseline at the, when they were first made. And so I'm definitely curious where they got applied, but I haven't seen the outcome. I think the quant companies have seen it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see where this when this starts getting implemented on a mass scale. Like for me personally, one of the ways that I'd love to see AI implemented wholesale would be in governance. So I'm of the mind that right now, as it stands, just the kind of political systems that we inhabit here in the West, at least in America, it seems to be course correcting, but there's still quite a few problems where people just feel very detached from the actual outcome itself. I mean, like, you guys have a vote every 4 years down there, sure, and then every other in between that you vote for the what's called I don't know if it's a Senate or what. My politics in America, knowledge is very very limited. But in any case, so you have these votes that happen every couple of years, or even in the municipal elections. Okay, sure, but then once you voted, it's like, okay, well, I really hope that person has my ideals in mind, has my best interests in mind. I hope that they don't overspend. And there's all these kind of I hope statements that we leave with these people, uh, many of which don't really come to fruition or don't come to fruition the way that they promised us. So I'm excited to see what happens when a country comes along and says, all right, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to plug an LLM into uh, all the databases that we have in terms of the statistics that we collect regarding the census, regarding the economic outlook, just regarding all these things that take, you know, hours, days, weeks to calculate, to just kind of make policy recommendations on. What happens when an LLM is able to work in that kind of environment and make policy suggestions that are apolitical, right? Policy suggestions that are built on uh, certain ideals in the country's constitution. What happens when governance does not become a popularity contest, but rather something like a chore? Something that is just a function that needs to be executed. We need to make sure that we're, you know, importing so many people from, such and such countries. When you break it down to like a science like that, that's what I'm excited for personally. Because as far as I'm concerned, we've had our chance with politics and we've fucked it up plenty. I say let the AI have a chance at it.
Yeah, I'm especially excited about like what that might mean for visibility, for like, you know, to basically democratize better, to let everyone have more of an understanding. The LM becomes this API between people who don't necessarily have a deep understanding of politics and the actual inner workings of the government, and maybe enables the, you know, uh, governance from the average person to be a lot more meaningful, accurate, useful, and steer the company better. The company steer the country better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool. I do think like one thing that I'm concerned about is like what does it mean to have to find like a neutral position on politics? I am not like convinced that even an LM can do a very good job of that. And I also think that people on either side of the spectrum would probably disagree about what is a neutral opinion. You know, and you can like make an LM that's like, okay, this is the average of every, you know, it's trained on everyone's political beliefs, and maybe we fine-tuned it based on a large amount of aggregated data about what people thought were like reasonable opinions, you know, that maybe shared beliefs about reasonable opinions between different political beliefs and stuff. There's things you can do there, but I also think you end up with like, unfortunately, it's the case that like when you democratize something, like say the design of a piece of software, um, when you get um, a bunch of different people to weigh in on the same design, you're usually going to end up with compromises about, you know, the way that it should be designed, and then you end up with something that's really like often a lot worse than either of the more extreme implementations of the design. You know, like one side had a political opinion that was like, we should do it this way. Um, it should be, you know, something that is, it's very contrary to the other side's opinion, but it in and of itself, it comes together to be this cohesive whole. You know, maybe like one of the details of their implementation synergizes with another detail, which enables them to build something that is um, has some really great emergent property. Some like, for instance, now that we have Trump is in office, you know, the billionaires basically have control of the country. We're gonna have these really centralized decisions where there's not um, a lot of you know, it's actually a lot less democratized.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get a lot of less uh, you know, Democrats are going to be able to weigh in a lot less on decisions because they basically have every corner of the government under control right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is concerning in some ways, but the centralization is really powerful and good for efficiency. And you know, sometimes I that is going to pan out for us to get some like really positive systems design that you can't get with a democratic, like a more democratic system. And so, um, like I don't know, on one level, I'm very like excited and interested to see what gets built and designed now. On the other hand, you know, there's a reason we've kept things as democratic as we have for hundreds of years in the Western world, which is that we're afraid of all of the downstream consequences of straying from democracy. So, but yeah, I'm not sure what it means to be politically neutral, and I'm not like totally convinced of like if we'd be able to agree. Um, you know, if like we as a country would be able to agree about like how do you build an LLM that has like good opinions in that way.
Yeah, no, it's one hell of an undertaking, and it's just something that I've kind of I've spitballed and thought about, not too deep, but just like surface level. Because I mean, let me put it to you this way. So in
Mm.
up here in Canada, we have this this tax, this national tax that applies to everybody, regardless of which province you live in. It's called the carbon tax, and initially we were sold on the carbon tax as a way to fight climate change. So everything that every single commodity and every single product that was associated with the expenditure of fossil fuels would have a tax pressed on it. Now, the
Mm.
problem is the PR push and all the marketing leading to the passage of this policy uh, was obviously politically motivated, and certain things were withheld from the Canadian population that have really only come out as of recent. And essentially, they were sold as well, sure, okay, there's going to be this new tax and costs are going to go up, but hey, check this out. There's a rebate that we're going to be sending you. I think it's once a year or once every couple of months to kind of offset those costs so that, as they said in their own words, 8 out of 10 Canadians will be getting more money than they are losing on the tax. Now,
Mhm.
okay, that sounds fine. But then when you consider the fact that just about everything we purchase is in some way, shape, or form affected by this tax because the fuel that it takes to transport these products, not even getting into manufacturing, just the transport alone, that's going to have an additional tax. So, in order to accommodate for that cost, the seller of those products is going to have to raise their price. Now, It may not seem like a huge jump. Maybe it's a couple cents here, maybe a dollar there, sure. But once you combine everything, the total cost of everything, all of that really starts to skyrocket. So, for instance, people have been posting like their gas bills in the last couple of months, and in the winters, obviously here in Canada, it dips to pretty low temps. Um, some people found that the tax was upwards of like I think 25 or 30% of their gas bill on top of what they usually pay. So now people have become like really disillusioned. They're like, "What the hell? Why am I paying $9 for a head of lettuce? This is fucking ridiculous. Like, why
Yeah.
are we facing this in one of the most developed nations on the planet? We don't even pollute all that much. It's mostly the third world in China and India. Like, why the hell do we have to pay for it?" And there's just been this kind of back and forth. And in my head, I was thinking, well, man, how nice would it have been for an open source LLM to break this policy down, to explain it in finer detail, what the projected costs would be, and to have not necessarily a referendum vote on it, but just kind of an open forum where for a couple of hours, government officials just simply, it's just input output. You put in the information regarding how much cost is it for transportation for certain products. Like if anyone's going to know, it's going to be the government. They have plenty of information. They have plenty of business partners that they can ask for this information, um, and just present it in a way that explains it and open source it in a way that anyone can understand it. So you don't need a degree. You don't need to be sifting through pages and pages and pages and doing the math on your own. Here's a presentation that explains it for you. And I think that uh, that's not a solution to the problems that we face in politics, but it's certainly a tool that can be really useful. And I really wish that we would see implementation of it in public office sooner than later, because the issues that we're kind of starting to face are a little bit too big to be facing with our polarized, left versus right dichotomy, which frankly the pendulum swing to me is just getting annoying at this point. I'm kind of sick and tired of how much of a role it plays in my life. I'd really much rather not think about the government at all, to be quite honest with you. I really don't care and don't want to, but here we
Yeah.
are. But that was just like a use case that I was thinking, like, man, like that would have been really useful. I wish we could have had this kind of um, that kind of
Yeah,
input from an impartial tool.
yeah, I think we will. Just something that's like really, yeah, smart and understands it and like translates it for people to understand would be incredible. Because right now, all of the that translation ability is like captured by the media in like ways where they have some bias and they want to like use the ability that they're the main outlets that can translate information so that the average um viewer can understand it in a way that also influences their opinion.
Hmm.
And so I guess I think that it's hard to not have some bias, but also I think we can have a lot less bias than we have right now. So I think yeah, maybe I'm agreeing with your point um a lot more than I thought at first. Like that makes a lot of sense to me. And maybe, in 4 or 5 years we'll have like open source models that are competitive with like O3 or O1 Pro or whatever. Hopefully O3 would be really cool. Um, but that's my guess though. We're lagging behind quite a lot. It's going to be really powerful though and really useful in those ways.
Yeah, and I was even like on a smaller scale, like even if we forget like implementation of policy, I think it would be really useful to have something. Let me see if I can pull it up. Um, like a website like this. So this is the U.S. National Debt Clock. I don't know what kind of stats they're using to get all this information, or as all these numbers go up. I'm not sure what kind of source data they use, but I was thinking even like, what if we had an interface like this that could track like everything from like immigration numbers to imports and exports to um, the rate of violent incidents or crime or anything like that. Just a little like a major dashboard that you'll be able to browse and look through. And in the simplest way that I could envision it is to just have either green or red indicators to show you that um, something is just, it's either not being done enough or it's being done too much, whether it's policing import export, like all those other things that I mentioned, and tracking that data in real time using AI to the best of its ability. Because the way that I have begun to understand the way that just politics works, you know, uh, going from teenager to adult, is I realized that a lot of these decisions are made um, as a reflex. So, certain policies are pushed or whatever, but until the consequences actually hit the ground, and until the
Mhm.
people on the ground actually feel it and live through it, only then do they realize, oh shit, this is actually not at all what we wanted. We need uh, the complete opposite, or we need to tone this down, or what have you. And I thought, well,
Mhm.
what if we just managed to mitigate that step by simply having uh, a live feedback system that would let us know, hey, by the way, crime has risen, by this percentage, and when this has happened in the past, according to the available statistics on your country, you've had, civil unrest or what have you. Like, it would just essentially be like a precog AI that would be able to tell you, like, hey, by the way, you're getting into the danger zone when it comes to trade, or you're getting in the danger zone regards to how much you're spending on weaponry and army, or what have you, so that this stuff isn't really as unattainable or difficult to understand for people, but just an open platform that would indicate, like, hey, might want to watch out for this because this is a concern, and it's all based on publicly available statistics, and anyone would be able to freely browse it. Like, I could really see the utility in something like that, because then we wouldn't have to rely on politicians to come out and speak about all these issues. We could see for ourselves in real time. Hey, immigration has gone up to a concerning amount. Maybe we should consider building more housing. Maybe we should consider opening up the job market. Maybe we should consider, ABC.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that that definitely makes some sense to me. I would like this. Um just for myself. Like I don't have like a really deep understanding of politics. I have enough understanding to get by and like, communicating with people and friends about it and like have some interesting discussions and learn some things, but I don't have understanding of the inner workings of what's going on. It would be useful for in government for politicians, but also just for people to understand what's going on.
Well, yeah, because like when they say, like, okay, what the national debt is at this amount, I'm like, I don't know what $1 trillion looks like, man. I don't know what $1 million looks like in person. Like, I don't like that number doesn't mean anything to me. You might as well have said 50 Brazilian, okay? Like, it has no bearing to me whatsoever. It's not grounded in anything real. It doesn't really it doesn't communicate any usefulness to me. I just look at that and I'm like, okay, well, that's probably bad, but I also can't do anything about it. So I'm just gonna keep, get back to washing the dishes or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this is actually an opportunity too for some like platform, some website. Um, someone should build a company around this potentially. Like, I think there's actually a market for this, as it would probably be originally presented as like just as a AI based news feed, and we already have a couple things that are like that. But I think then enabling people to like dig in and have conversations slash like just get really dense information about the current state of different parts of the political landscape would be super handy, and maybe it could be a little bit more generative than it is right now.
Yeah, because I one of the things that I've come to understand, as I've been trying to distance myself from how much I pay attention to politics, is how complicated some of these issues can be. And I mean, the average person, you're so busy with your 9 to 5, your family, your friends, your own personal goals and aspirations, that when an issue does arise, whether it's cultural or political or economical or what have you, um, we're just kind of in this reactionary state, and we don't know what to do. We don't know what the actual levers of power are. Because I've heard on multiple instances where, like, Congress people have come out and said, like, as much as I want to take action on this issue, I can't because my phone isn't ringing, because my constituents aren't letting me know that this is a concern for them. Well, what if we had a platform that allowed people to just simply log on, and it would highlight some, like, issues that are local to wherever it is that you live, and then it'll give you a selection of different things that you could do. For example, it could auto generate an email for you so that every time someone uses it, it's completely unique, and send it off to your local representatives, letting them know how you feel, or give you a list of phone numbers to call, or even eventually call on your behalf and just simply leave them a voicemail or what have you. um, I just think the accessibility for the individual to get involved in what actually matters politically, not just like federally and nationally, but even in their own local areas where politics actually matters a lot more. Um, we're just not at that level yet where there's kind of like a collective consciousness surrounding that. I mean, sure, I'll see protests here and now, like about like the bigger issues like Ukraine or Palestine, Israel, and all that, but I don't really hear of a lot of people going to school board meetings or um, voting for their comptroller, whatever. I don't even know what a comptroller is, but I've I've heard of that position. Um, I think there's an untapped market there that could, especially in this day and age, could really be utilized for good.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Um, yeah, I can't wait for this.
And in terms of some of the crazy stuff that you've seen, just on the timeline for how people have been using this, or even just in your day to day. I mean, in San Francisco, I'd imagine it's quite the buzz down there, especially if you're interacting with people in that space. What are some of the more interesting things that you've seen around this the tech development for this?
Yeah, I've been currently seeing a lot of like really great new generative tools. Just like lots of people in my sphere are building tools that allow you to build software faster. Um, I think like I personally use Cursor, but there's sort of higher level stuff that's really well executed that I think is in the pipeline and just like uh isn't available yet, but soon a lot of people are going to be empowered by this that are like currently not even engineers. And that's really cool and exciting because I want to see more people that I know like building stuff that is like helpful for them, their own tooling, like stuff like that. Like I wouldn't even be surprised if like you couldn't find some way of helping optimize or like what's the word? Just automate your podcast a lot more and stuff like this with
Mm-hmm.
tools that are coming soon. Like it would involve like you kind of explaining what you need and then just building tooling around your own particular custom workflows and stuff like that. And I think it's getting a lot easier to do stuff like that. Um, a lot of local models are just getting really good, and so I'm hanging with friends and we're just like messing with local models often, being able to do a lot of things that uh, just 6 months ago you couldn't have dreamed of doing with any model other than ChatGPT or Claude. You just do on your laptop. um, Definitely seeing, due to the kind of crypto influx on Teapot, like a lot of people who are in AI have some attention on crypto now, which was kind of
Mm-hmm.
the inverse of what originally happened. It was like crypto had attention on AI. Um, and I'm I and many people are just like have been historically averse to the crypto community just because it's really annoying. Um, it's
Yeah.
annoying because there's anything wrong with crypto as technology. Yeah, it's just like, well, actually, the thing that's wrong with crypto as a technology is that it produces these perverse incentives around spreading, like mimetically spreading um, your project or your technology. If you build
Mm-hmm.
anything on a crypto blockchain, you've suddenly built this gigantic multi-level marketing scheme within, you know, a day or however long it took you to build, this particular chain. And like, so yeah, annoying that it seeps into everything. But the technology itself is really cool and really useful. Um, and I'm excited to like watch as more people like in the crypto so the in the AI community, we are kind of becoming increasingly um we're getting increasingly advanced in terms of like how rapidly we can build tech, and then people are just able to like really rapidly build new uh crypto blockchains and stuff, and the overlap is kind of interesting because I am interested in crypto and where it can go. And so I'm just like watching friends spin up blockchains and stuff pretty fast. I personally haven't engaged in that so far, but you know, if I see something that's worth doing, then I'll consider it. Um, but yeah, I'd like to avoid the kind of like cultural mess that is crypto in the more like annoying mimetic ways that it tends to exist. Um, yeah, lots of that. I guess that's kind of in some ways the crypto thing is like old news, but it's still like the community's reeling from it, so it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I share your sentiment there. I am very averse to that kind of stuff just because of how easy it is to either get rug pulled or just simply, lied to. Yeah, there's a lot of faith that you're taking on whenever you support any one of these projects, especially if you've never even interacted with the person ever in real life. Because online they could have an LLM feed you back the responses and train it so that it's you know believable and so on and so forth. So I don't trust anything like that. But if I could offer a counterexample, there's actually one use case in crypto that really made me understand the even though NFTs are kind of a meme now, the utility of them. This one girl I'd met at an event in Toronto, she explained to me that there's this basketball league. I think it's called the Big Three, which funny enough, Ice Cube, the rapper, had started, and they had created an NFT for one of the teams in this league. And this league is like rivaling the NBA. I mean, it's to the point where like the NBA is actually actively suppressed any kind of development, and they've decided to not work with this league because it's a direct competitor to them, which is pretty fucking huge. But in any case, so this one team had sold uh, NFTs, and so essentially what would happen is you would then have ownership of one of the actual athletes there, or rather have ownership of their card. So if the team did well, your NFT goes up, and you have ownership of the team, which gives you some voting rights in terms of like what they want to do
Mhm.
regarding the team development or some of the brand deals they take or what have you. And when I
Interesting.
heard this example, I never really considered anything like this before because I had just seen all the bored apes and pepes and all this weird shit that happened around COVID when every celebrity was gifted an NFT. Um,
Mm.
but when she explained this to me, I was like, oh, that's really useful. That's actually a really cool way of going about it. I'd never even thought that an NFT could be used like that.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It's more grounded in like existing systems that have just worked in the real world. The new stuff works too, but it's also just like more disconnected from reality, less it's harder to imbue meaning into just digital objects that exist only in the context of digital objects. I like that we are experimenting more with like real world impact and like real world systems design.
Yeah, and the other example that she mentioned was that there were companies out there that could actually make the deed to your house an NFT, and the reason that that was valuable is because apparently there is a scam going around where um, I think there was some kind of either public release or whatnot, but somebody could actually attain the deed to your house. I don't know whether like they actually had to like actually hack into a system or something like that, but apparently there's the scam was going around. So this company came around, they're like, all right, fuck it. Like, we're not gonna make this system rely on a piece of paper that you have to be the holder of. We're gonna make this something that's digital that exists in the blockchain. You can see exactly where it is, and you have the ownership of it, which would essentially protect you from any such scams where somebody could simply just purchase and sell your the deed to your house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just
That's yeah, that's really good.
interesting
I'm
stuff.
I'm concerned about scams like this. Like also I think it's really important that everyone give their like parents and or family a safe word so that because voice emulation is getting really good. I've also had like people emulate my voice. I have a lot of actual voice data out on the internet. It's not very easy to find because it's like on niche platforms like Castle or whatever, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of my voice and people like some. kids in our community have just taken all my voice data, dumped it into a voice model, and they just have a voice model where they can just make me say anything they want, which is really eerie, and also just reminded me like, oh yeah, maybe um, there's a bunch of like ways in which this could be misused for a lot of people, and so I've kind of like covered the bases there. But I think it's important that more people do that.
No, certainly, because in that presentation that I showed you earlier, with the Center for Humane Technology, at the time when they said it in 2023, I think it was about not even a minute's worth of your voice, and last I heard, the benchmark is now at like not even 5 seconds. So, yeah,
Yeah.
this could very well happen, and I think I've even my friend, um, somebody somehow got a hold of his recordings, and had called his grandma saying that he needed bail money because he was in jail, and she was like
Mhm.
seconds away from transferring it to when he called her, and he's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And he got to the bottom of it, and he's like, "Dude, somebody hijacked my voice. What the fuck?" So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's dangerous out there.
Yeah. I'm glad that there are simple like this is sort of a this is actually kind of a weird thing to say ontologically, but like I'm glad that that the universe allows us to just have um safe words or whatever like I don't even know what it would mean for it to be the case that you can't have a safe word. What universe or what laws would enable that, but it would be bad. We'd be pretty screwed. Sometimes you can just get technology that like isn't patchable. You know, it's kind of like we've been really lucky so far that like nukes don't light up the atmosphere, and AI so far hasn't gone completely rogue and etc. But this is another instance of like you could build the technology that could tear apart society in some way
Yeah,
just by
so far
enabling
so
crime.
good.
Yeah, so far so good. This could be selection bias to some degree, but hopefully not.
Yeah, so far so good. On that note, I know you got to run, so I won't keep you any longer than I have to. In terms of socials, is Twitter really the only place people can find your stuff?
It's the main place. Yeah, I'd say this is the most important. Um, I also have uh yeah, I mean you can check out my the app I work on, Castle. I have a profile there that has a bunch of games and stuff, but it's going to be kind of like, if you're just interested in indie games and stuff, I make stuff there. Um, and I'm also just like building a bunch of software. You'll find that like on my Twitter, and you can try those things out. There's like different websites that I've built around different interesting tools.
Yeah, I didn't even get to ask you about all this stuff, um, but would
Yeah,
certainly
this is
be.
definitely a big passion of mine. But you can read about it on my Twitter. This is just like, um, this is I read this Wolfram blog, and I've been very obsessed with cellular automata for a long time since I was a kid. It's partially how I got into programming. Is just like, oh, you can like simulate simple rules on like a grid, and you can get really cool emergent behaviors. So this is fully deterministic what you're looking at here. There's no randomness. It's just a simple rule being applied over and over again, and every slice of that is time. So the vertical layer is like time being progressed, and the
Hmm.
only like the world is just one slice at a given time. Um, and yeah, basically the idea was do it in 3D. And I haven't really finished executing on this project, but the idea is you can kind of have them evolve by optimizing for a certain behavior. Like for instance, filling up as much of the space with cells as possible or something like that. And then you can try and like modify the rule and have it kind of mutate towards more effective versions of the simulation. Um, but yeah, that's a website called polyp.observer. Subway slime mold.
That reminds me, just briefly before you head out, there was, I believe it was, could be wrong, but it was a Japanese university, I think. It took maps of subway networks and had slime molds remap them. So they put different little like bits of protein and whatnot uh, along the different nodes of a subway network, to make sure that like it it had some parameters to start with, like this is where all the main stations are, and it essentially gave the slime mold an opportunity to find um, more efficient patterns of
Yeah.
generating all these different subway lines. And some of the stuff it came up with was really fucking wild, because the way that it just remapped the way that these subway lines were built was much better than what the engineers had come up with.
Damn.
And yeah, this was okay. So it was Tokyo subway, yeah. But it just made me think of when you brought that up here, because it's, like you said, you just give it the parameters of, what is the goal here.
Exactly.
Except instead of a slime mold, you got an AI model that can do it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't actually, I've heard a little bit about that one experiment, but I didn't realize that how they did it was that they sort of placed the slime in the original configuration, which makes sense because it gets all of the sort of it gets to optimize from there
Mm-hmm.
with where the subway stations are or whatever. Um, in this case, yeah, it's kind of similar. You're just having this gradual process that grows towards a more optimal solution, which I'll probably come back to this project eventually because I'm excited about seeing where it goes. But Wolfram, as you can see, like I retweeted this Stephen Wolfram post right below the video, and it's basically Wolfram made this one-dimensional version of this where you can see the vertical slices in there. Like if you look at the ones on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
you can read them slice by slice, and each slice is actually a momentary state of the simulation. And so as it goes down, the goal of each one of those like strips is basically to cover as much space as possible, and or actually it might just be length based in those particular simulations, and then kill themselves entirely. And as you see, they all end eventually, and they're ending naturally because they're kind of self-designed via evolution and natural selection to go a really long way and then kind of kill themselves essentially. And if they don't kill themselves and they explode infinitely, which is something that cellular automatas can do very easily, in fact, most of them do. Most of them either don't do anything, die really fast, or they explode infinitely. But these ones are the rare instance of ones that don't explode infinitely but get big, and that's because they score 0 if they go infinitely, and they score
Mm-hmm.
very low if they die really early. So they're kind of evolving to be these weird systems that can grow really large but then stop existing by destroying their last cells. And it's a problem that's hard to solve, and so it allows us to kind of explore natural selection and what it means for systems to evolve with a really simple set of parameters and a really simple set of like rules, and that just is really great for research and stuff. And I was like, what if I take this and I make it two-dimensional? So I made it two-dimensional, but to render a two-dimensional cellular automata with the time dimension also rendered, you need a three-dimensional model, so that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's 3D.
Interesting. Very interesting. I can see the value. I just can't understand it. I'll put it to you that way. But no, this is great,
I
man.
love
This.
this stuff. Like I don't understand what it's doing either. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's sort of more like observation after the fact. You can learn a lot from kind of just seeing. Like you can learn a lot about the universe and like we're these really crazy emergent systems, you and I and humans and like our entire world. And it's like, where does all of that beauty and emergent behavior come from? And you can kind of discover it by looking at really simple things and seeing that they do the same stuff. So I think that's really cool. Yeah.
Right on. Right on, man. That's as good a place to end it as any. So yeah, people can find you at Lukalot underscore. Certainly check
Yeah,
them out,
that's right.
guys. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pipeline from what you've said, and I'm excited to see more of your projects. Thank you for being a fan, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today. It's been really fun.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really cool conversation, and I will be watching future episodes as well. Now that I know you have a podcast, I might retroactively check them out too. Sorry, I meant Spotify, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. By all means. And yeah, would certainly love to have you on at a future episode to see more of the excited stuff that you'll be working on. And so yeah, guys, tune in. I don't know when I'll be on next, but peep the Twitter. Everything will be there. So with that, have a good night.
So yeah.